Love that defies time, beauty that challenges fate. This is the tragic and timeless love story of Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Adonis, the mortal whose allure captured her heart. Their passion was as fleeting as it was intense, but even the gods couldn't escape the inevitable pull of destiny. Join me as we dive into their tale, a story of devotion, sacrifice, and the delicate dance between life and death. Stay with me until the end and discover the price of love that transcends mortality. Once upon a time, in a distant land, there was a kingdom of extraordinary beauty ruled by the powerful king Cinyras, a man known for his brilliance and wisdom. However, within the heart of his family, there lay a dark and unpredictable fate, one of those that only the gods can weave. Mira, the daughter of Cinyras, was a young woman of dazzling beauty, a gift many attributed to Aphrodite herself. But that beauty, rather than being a blessing, became the source of such great unhappiness that it shook both the sky and the earth. It is said that Mira was struck by a divine curse, perhaps for an unintentional offense to Aphrodite, or a twist of fate that only the gods could understand. This curse drove her to feel an unnatural desire toward her father, Cinyras. The young woman, tormented by an impulse she could not control and oppressed by a feeling of shame that consumed her, tried in vain to resist. But the gods, as we know, play with mortal hearts like a tempestuous wind with autumn leaves. Deceived by the circumstances and unaware of Mira's identity, Cinyras fell victim to a tragic deception, spending the night with his own daughter. When he discovered the truth, the king, devastated by horror and betrayal, sought to punish the girl. Mira, fleeing from her father's fury, begged the gods for help, crying out into the night with tears running down her face. "Deliver me from this shame," she prayed. "Save me from myself." The gods, moved by compassion or perhaps eager to end a tragedy they had helped create, transformed Mira into a tree. Her body turned to bark, her arms became branches, and from her eyes flowed fragrant resin, petrified tears of eternal sorrow. Thus was born the myrrh tree, a symbol of beauty, suffering, and purification. However, the story did not end there. Beneath the bark of the tree, Mira still held a secret, a life growing inside her. After months of silence, the trunk split open with a deep crack, and from it was born a child. The gods watched the scene, and even the winds stilled to welcome that extraordinary moment. The newborn was Adonis. From the very first moment, his beauty was dazzling, so perfect it seemed unreal. His eyes shone like the light of dawn, and his skin appeared to be carved by the gods themselves. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, was walking one day through the woods, where the fragrance of flowers intertwined with the soft song of nature's creatures. It was there that her gaze fell upon Adonis, still a child, asleep beneath the shade of a tree. His beauty was already unmatched, as if the gods themselves had sculpted his face with infinite care. Aphrodite was enchanted. There was nothing more perfect, more pure than this little being. In that moment, her heart filled with an inexplicable love, a desire to protect him from the world and the fate that would inevitably await him. Fearing that Adonis's extraordinary beauty might attract the attention of malevolent forces or jealous gods, Aphrodite made a decision. With great care, she hid the child in an elaborate chest, carved with scenes of love and sacrifice, and took it to the underground realm of Persephone, the queen of the underworld. Persephone was known for her grace and wisdom, and Aphrodite trusted that, far from the eyes of the world, Adonis would be safe. "I entrust you with this child," said Aphrodite solemnly, handing the chest to Persephone. "Protect him, guard him as if he were your own. I will return for him when the time is right." Persephone accepted the task, opened the chest, and upon seeing the face of little Adonis, was speechless. Never before, not even in the flower-filled gardens of her realm, had she seen something so splendid. The goddess who ruled the world of shadows found in the child a light capable of illuminating even the darkest corners of her domain. The years passed, and Adonis grew, transforming into a young man of extraordinary beauty, capable of evoking admiration in all who met him. Persephone, who had initially seen him as just a task entrusted to her by Aphrodite, began to consider him an integral part of her world, a precious gift she never wanted to lose. When Aphrodite returned to reclaim Adonis, Persephone refused. "I cannot return him," said Persephone, whose heart had become attached to the young man. "Adonis belongs to me now. He has grown under my protection, and I do not intend to part with him." Aphrodite, outraged by the betrayal, did not accept the refusal. The dispute between the two goddesses intensified, and their heated emotions threatened to ignite a war between the realms of Earth and the underworld. Both were determined not to yield, and young Adonis found himself at the center of a conflict he had not sought, caught between two goddesses whose power could shake the balance of the universe. It was Zeus, the king of the gods, who intervened to end the dispute. He summoned Aphrodite and Persephone to Olympus, where the golden light of the sun illuminated the divine throne. His voice thundered as he pronounced his verdict. Adonis will spend a third of the year with Aphrodite, a third with Persephone, and the remaining third will be free to choose where he prefers to stay, Zeus decreed with authority. The two goddesses, though reluctant, could do nothing but accept the decision. When it was time to choose, Adonis, with his heart now bound to beauty and passion, decided to spend his free time with Aphrodite. Thus, a fragile balance was established, and Adonis began to live a life divided between the warmth of love and the depth of the realm of shadows. But in this alternation of places and feelings, fate continued to weave its invisible threads, preparing for new, unpredictable turns. Aphrodite and Adonis spent their days immersed in a passion that seemed to defy time itself. It was as if the love between them were a golden thread woven by the gods, so radiant that it dazzled anyone who looked upon them. Their meetings took place in the most enchanting places, flower-filled meadows where the wind whispered gently, secret woods where the sun's rays filtered through the leaves like heavenly blessings. Aphrodite, with her unparalleled beauty, shone beside Adonis, whose earthly charm seemed made to complement her. Together they were a perfect harmony, a melody that no one would dare interrupt. Aphrodite, however, could not ignore a subtle unease that darkened her heart. Despite the happiness she felt beside Adonis, she knew that their love was fragile, constantly threatened by the dangers of the mortal world. One day, as they strolled along a valley covered in wild roses, Aphrodite stopped and took Adonis's hand with a gesture full of seriousness. "Adonis," she began, her voice trembling under the weight of apprehension, "you must promise me that you will stay away from danger. Do not chase wild animals or venture into risky hunts. Nature is beautiful but cruel, and the blood of men is not immune to its ferocity." Adonis, with a smile reflecting both youth and confidence, reassured her. "Do not worry about me, Aphrodite. I have faced the challenges of life with courage, and I will know how to protect myself." But Aphrodite was not convinced. The goddess knew all too well the fragility of mortal flesh and the cruelty of fate. The gods could love humans, but their love could not undo the finiteness of earthly life. Every day they spent together, Aphrodite tried to forget this truth, immersing herself in the joy of their shared moments. Her laughter rang out like music between the hills, and the touch of Adonis gave her a warmth that even Olympus could not offer. The two lovers lost themselves in hours of tenderness, caressing flower petals, immersing themselves in the crystal-clear waters of rivers, or simply lying side by side under the starry sky. For Aphrodite, every moment was precious, a gift to be cherished. And yet, deep in her heart, she felt the weight of a love that, as intense as it was vulnerable to the passing of time and the whims of fate. Despite her warning, Adonis was fascinated by hunting, a passion that seemed to run in his blood. The challenge, the thrill, the chase were irresistible to him. Like an ancestral call, he could not escape. Aphrodite, aware of this inclination, did her best to distract him, offering the pleasures of love and the serenity of nature. But she could not always hold him back. The sun rose high in the sky, kissing the hills with its warm rays, but that day carried with it a dark omen. Adonis, heedless of Aphrodite's warnings, was preparing for another hunting trip. The young man could not resist the call of the wild, where the heart beat faster and every step was a challenge against fate. With his bow on his back and his quiver full of arrows, he ventured into the forests, accompanied only by the rustle of leaves and the distant song of birds. He did not know that this day would be different, that a hidden presence was watching him from the shadows of the trees. Some say it was Ares, the god of war and jealous lover of Aphrodite, who sparked the tragedy. Others say it was Artemis, offended by the young man's arrogance, or seeking revenge for a wrong she had suffered. Whatever the truth, what happened was a blow orchestrated by divine whim. Adonis was in a clearing when suddenly a giant boar emerged from the thicket. The animal was a fierce creature, with tusks as sharp as daggers and eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Adonis, without hesitation, drew his bow and shot an arrow, but the strike missed its target. The boar, enraged, charged with overwhelming force. Adonis tried to escape, but the uneven ground betrayed his steps. The boar reached him in an instant, striking the young man with a tusk and knocking him to the ground. Blood began to flow, staining the wildflowers that grew in the clearing. Adonis groaned, his body broken by the ferocity of the attack, while the boar vanished into the forest, like a shadow returned to stillness. Aphrodite, warned by fate or perhaps by a premonition, rushed desperately. She moved across fields and hills with superhuman speed, heedless of the thorns that pierced her feet and the tears that streaked her face. When she reached the clearing, she found Adonis lying on the ground, his breath faint and his eyes clouded by pain. "Adonis!" Aphrodite cried, kneeling beside him. Her hands trembled as she tried to stop the blood flowing from his wounds. But it was all in vain. The young man smiled weakly, raising a hand to touch her face, as if he wanted to imprint in his memory the image of the goddess he had loved so much. "Don't leave me," Aphrodite whispered, her voice broken by sobs. "Not like this." But fate was relentless. With one final breath, Adonis gave in to eternal sleep, leaving Aphrodite alone in the clearing, surrounded by a spectral silence. The goddess's pain was so great that even nature seemed to share it. From the flowers stained with Adonis's blood, anemones were born, symbols of beauty and fragility, a tribute to the young man whose life had been as brief as it was brilliant. Aphrodite stayed beside Adonis's body until nightfall, unable to accept the loss. Her lament echoed through the hills, a cry of sorrow that is said to still resonate in the winds. And so, with the death of Adonis, an extraordinary love found its tragic end, leaving behind a story that would be told for centuries. Zeus, king of the gods, looked down from above at the tragedy that had unfolded. Aphrodite's pain from the loss of Adonis had shaken even the divine hearts, and even Mount Olympus, accustomed to power games and mortal passions, seemed disturbed. The goddess's suffering was a reminder of the fragility of love and the power of the bond that connects humans and gods to that which they love. It was then that Zeus, moved by a rare compassion, decided to break the cycle of eternal loss. He summoned Aphrodite and Persephone and announced a compromise. Adonis, whose life had been so brutally cut short, would have the chance to return to the living, but his existence would be divided between two worlds. For half the year, Adonis would dwell in the realm of the dead with Persephone, the queen of the underworld, while in the other half, he would return to the earth, where Aphrodite could enjoy his presence. This decision, though imperfect, was the best that even Zeus could grant, for even the gods cannot entirely escape the cycle of life and death. So when Adonis returned from the land of the dead, Aphrodite's joy was uncontrollable. Her love had defied mortality itself and brought back to the light what had been swallowed by darkness. Yet, Adonis's return was not without shadows. Every moment spent together was cloaked in the awareness of its temporality. Aphrodite knew that, like all things beautiful and fragile, Adonis would once again be torn from her. This alternating presence and absence was not only a lesson for the goddess, but also a greater symbol. Rebirth is never complete without loss, and beauty itself is made precious by its fleeting nature. The bond between Aphrodite and Adonis became a universal emblem of the fragility of love and the soul's ability to be reborn, even in the face of the deepest suffering. Adonis, with his divided fate, embodied the eternal cycle of life and death, pain and hope. His story, though tragic, spoke of a love that regenerates despite adversity, and a beauty that continues to bloom even when it seems lost forever. Aphrodite, in her divinity, had known mortality, and from that experience, she understood a deeper meaning, one of love that transcends the boundaries of time and space. If you were moved by the love story of Aphrodite and Adonis, don't forget to give a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you won't miss more timeless tales from the gods and legends. Until next time, keep exploring the myths and shadows that shape our world.